Nature never ceases to amaze us. Our world is full of weird and wonderful occurrences that scientists struggle to understand. Like Limp Bizkit said, "Don't think you know what the hell I'm all about. Phenomenon. Something like a phenomenon." From a well in England that turns anything into stone or an eternal flame behind a waterfall, I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 mind-boggling natural phenomena you won't believe exist. Yes, I'm a Limp Bizkit fan. 25. Columnar Basalt. Columnar basalts are some of the most mysterious products of the Earth, precisely because of how manufactured they look. These are joints that are formed out of lava. When lava cools down, it contracts so much that it cracks, spilling the lava into another column, and so on. 24. The Dancing Forest. You know those walking trees in Lord of the Rings, the Ents? Well, it turns out Tolkien might not have been far off. Trees in Western Russia take peculiar, inexplainable shapes. Instead of growing up in a more or less straight line, they wane and bend, sometimes traveling in a loop before shooting into the air. These playful shapes have earned the area the nickname of the Dancing Forest. Scientists are still struggling to agree on why exactly they behave this way. The main theories have to do with the kinds of seeds used, strong winds blowing away their cover, or even some kind of geomagnetic field interrupting growth. 23. Snow donuts. Picture a big bale of hay. Now imagine that it's the dead of winter and the shape is frozen. Believe it or not, objects like these exist out in the wild, and there's no hay on the inside. They're called snow donuts, or as I'm specifically referring to them from now on, snow nuts. And they form when the wind rolls a large chunk of snow into a cylindrical shape, often picking up pieces of rock along the way. The only way for them to start is for a layer to melt away, leaving a sticky outside, and then add some wind and a relatively flat surface, and before you know it, there are your snow nuts. Fine, snow donuts. Hashtag snow nuts in the thing if you like my... They did it with cronuts, why can't we do it with this? Alright? 22. The White Desert. Farafra. A little northwest of the center of Egypt lies the White Desert. Covered by white rocks and sand, it's a landscape that's been shaped by millions of years of slow buildup. This area was once covered by water, where sediment and rocks piled up at the bottom to eventually form a layer of limestone spanning 300 meters at its thickest point. Once the water left, this material was left exposed to the elements, carving out an extraordinary landscape. The rocks remaining stick up over the surface like natural monuments, giving them an otherworldly appearance. It's also very fun to say Farafra. Go ahead, give it a shot. Farafra. You're welcome. 21. The Petrifying Well. For hundreds of years, the town of Knaresborough in northern England has been famous for something that seemed to be impossible. A well that could transform objects left in its water into stone in months. The Petrifying Well, as it became known, was connected to witchcraft and sorcery. However, scientists were eventually able to figure out what was happening. Water flowing up from the underground collects a large amount of iron, magnesium, aluminum, and other elements, or, since it's in the UK, aluminium. As some of the water dissolves and evaporates, a compound called calcium carbonate runs and coats anything that comes in its path, seeming to turn it into stone. The Petrifying Well is now a tourist attraction, with a selection of calcium carbonated objects hanging from its walls, from a pair of underpants to a roller skate. 20. Synchronized Fireflies. Fireflies have long been one of the most mysterious spectacles in nature. Despite only living for about a month, their time is bright. To signal that they are ready to mate, fireflies flash to each other. The flashing of some fireflies is linked more to their group. Synchronized fireflies can light up perfectly in time with those around them, performing an impressive light show. Instead of having an internal rhythm of their own, researchers have found that the synchronized flashing comes from the synergy of the group. After dozens of studies, the mechanism behind this emergent behavior remains largely unsolved. 19. Penitentes. When Charles Darwin was journeying through South America, he came across hundreds of daggers of snow pointed upwards. He was as intrigued as visitors are today. But what created these striking shapes? They're formed as sunshine bears down on snow so strongly that it moves straight from snow to water vapor instead of melting first. What's left are spikes of ice that look out of place on a dry, rocky mountaintop. An equally haunting landscape is the expansive salt flats in Bolivia, so flat that NASA uses it to test their satellites, and that's coming up soon. 18. Ball lightning. Have you ever seen a ball of lightning before? That might sound like something that Thor would summon up in a Marvel movie, but Mother Nature is just as powerful. While the process behind the phenomenon aren't completely understood, it can appear in the middle of a thunderstorm as a floating, glowing orb lasting just a matter of seconds. One of the leading theories is that ball lightning is formed after lightning makes contact with the ground, combining with the minerals in the earth below. 17. Rain of animals. You've heard the phrase, raining cats and dogs, right? But I bet you never thought it could be literal. However, there have been a handful of recorded instances of animals falling out of the sky. One of those was in 1794, as French troops were moving towards the German border to face off against the Austrian army. At a moment when there was no enemy in sight, the French soldiers were forced to flee. Rain spontaneously poured down on them. And that wasn't all. Among the raindrops were small toads pelting down on the troops and proceeding to scatter in different directions, still very much alive. Other instances in England and the US have been just as bizarre. Tornadoes or strong winds seem to be the most credible explanation, but there are still huge question marks, and scientists have never had a chance to study the phenomenon. 16. Batagaika crater. From high up in space, there's a crater in Russia so big that satellites have been taking pictures of it for more than 6 decades. The Batagaika crater, which dates back to around 650,000 years ago, is the world's biggest permafrost crater. Fossils of extinct animals have been uncovered inside the crater that drops down 100 meters below ground level. However, now permafrost inside the crater has been slowly melting over time. This is a problem because it accelerates climate change by releasing dangerous gases, most of all methane, that are trapped in the soil. 15. Frozen methane bubbles. Speaking of methane, in certain parts of the world, bubbling underneath an icy surface are pockets of gases. When a decomposing body like animal flesh falls into a lake, an excited mini ecosystem gets to work. Tiny microbes begin eating the flesh, and in doing so, produce methane. That methane makes its way up to the surface encased in bubbles, but when they're frozen, they become trapped. Later, when this ice melts, the deadly methane is released into the atmosphere, speeding up global warming. 14. The reflective salt flats. What do you get when you add one of the flattest terrains in the world with 10 billion tons of salt? The answer is the Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia, a landscape that has to be seen to be believed. Standing in the center, it spans 500 square miles in every direction, almost completely flat. The surface is topped by a layer of water, making the entire ground appear like a gigantic mirror. The surface is so flat that it's often used to calibrate and test satellite equipment. 13. The green sands of Papakōlea Beach. What comes to mind when I say Hawaii? Probably white sandy beaches. However, in a relatively secluded part of the state, there is a green sand beach. The exceptionally rare phenomenon originates from a mineral called olivine, made plentiful by the volcanic eruptions that formed the islands of Hawaii. Specifically, the olivine is high when groundwater mixes with magma, creating what are called tuff rings. 12. The Boiling River. This is a place you do not want to stop for a bath. Called the Shinei-Timpishka, the system of rivers spans over 5.5 miles in the depths of the Amazon and seems to defy reality. It holds a deep place in local culture for its extraordinary power. This river can reach temperatures exceeding 200 degrees Fahrenheit, enough to make it a death sentence for anything that falls in. The origin of the heat is deep underneath the earth, where geothermal forces increase the temperature of the water and deliver it back to the surface through fault lines. Just as scary as boiling water are the rapidly turning whirlpools of Naruto. That's coming up at number 9. 11. Socotra Dragon's Blood Trees. If you're looking for shade after a long day's work, there aren't many trees better than this one. Dragon's blood trees are thick at the trunk and sprout out like an umbrella at the top, giving thick coverage from the sun. This structure gives them the power to take in rainfall and transport it down through its trunk to the soil, hydrating the nearby vegetation. There are other unique properties to these trees too. They have been highly sought after for centuries for the red nectar that comes from the trunks. This has been used for pottery, nail polish, as well as a range of medical uses, traveling from their native islands Socotra and Yemen all over the world. 10. Kjeragbolten. You may have seen this boulder before. It's one of the most famous rocks on Instagram. Located in western Norway, the boulder known as the Kjeragbolten sits over 3,000 feet above the ground, wedged between two mountains. The boulder likely slotted into this position over 50,000 years ago, after glaciers melted away and left it almost suspended in air. Now, it's a popular hiking spot, and tourists are encouraged to walk over the boulder, if they dare. But you're only allowed to walk over it if you can pronounce Kjeragbolten. 9. The Naruto Whirlpools. Are you scared of the ocean? Well, then you might want to look away now. This is something more terrifying than big waves or strong wind. Naruto Whirlpools, located in the southern part of Japan between the city of Naruto and Awaji Island, are a true force of nature. Generated by tidal currents in the shape of the land, water can reach speeds of over 12 miles an hour, some of the fastest in the world. These whirlpools can span 20 meters and are immortalized in a painting by famous Japanese painter Hiroshige. 8. Snow monsters. When winter comes around, high up on Mount Zhao in Japan, thousands of strange figures appear. At a particular time of year, cold winds blasting from Siberia deposit up to 3 meters of snow on the area, leaving the trees drenched and coated in snow. The distinct type of trees causes what's called the Juyo effect, where they develop distinctive shapes, standing tall, making some of them look almost alive. This has earned the trees the nickname of snow monsters. These silhouetted shapes, especially in the dark, are even lit up by ski resorts and have become a tourist attraction. 7. Giants of Montserrat. In the area of Montserrat in Spain is a rock face that took millions of years to take shape. They appear as giant pillars, and have even been compared to fingers, which is where they get their name, the Giants of Montserrat. Framing the towns below, these rocks are an example of what's called conglomerate rock, when different kinds of rock types, like pebbles and sand, have been fused together, a process that takes millions of years. 6. The Blue Grotto. If you happen to be on the southern coast of Italy, in the Campania region, you probably aren't running short on beautiful attractions to visit. Still, if a geological phenomenon is on your bucket list, then the Blue Grotto stands out. It's a long cave, stretching about 60 meters, and only accessible in certain conditions. The entrance is so narrow that if you're traveling by boat, most passengers need to lie down just to avoid hitting their heads. Once inside, though, the reward is a colorful display of blue and emerald light, which bounces off the bottom of the cave underwater and illuminates the deep blue of the water. 5. The Needles. Right off the coast of the Isle of Wight in England, there are 3 peculiar formations, dotted in a line out to sea. They were formed out of the folding of chalk, making them incredibly stable and almost immune to erosion. The tallest of them once reached a height of 120 feet before it collapsed in 1764. Now, they still stand an impressive 100 feet above the water. On the third and final rock face is a lighthouse. Fortunately, there's no lonely lighthouse keeper out there anymore, as the facility is completely automated. 4. The Eternal Flame Falls. What is the last thing you'd expect to see hidden behind a waterfall? Probably a raging fire, but that's exactly what there is at Chestnut Ridge Park, about 6 hours west of New York City. So, how exactly does it maintain its flame? It's powered by a steady supply of gas. A little over 2 pounds of methane leaks out of the rocks each day. The Eternal Flame was formed about 350 million years ago, and despite the name, this flame doesn't actually stay lit all the time. If too much water falls on it, or fierce gusts of wind make their way inside, the flame can be put out. But locals are quick to relight it, partly because it has a strong meaning in Native American culture. And this is likely the way the first fire here started. That doesn't mean there isn't any mystery left behind this fire, though. Scientists first thought the gas was coming from piping hot shale rocks far down below the surface. However, after an investigation, they realized the temperatures weren't high enough. 3. Meeting of waters. Mix water with water, and what do you get? Well, you might be surprised, but it depends on the water. About 6 miles outside of Manaus, the largest city in the Amazon rainforest, there is a strange meeting of 2 rivers, the Rio Negro and the Amazon River. Thousands of tourists flock to the area to see this very point. Why? Because once the two rivers meet, their waters refuse to mix, running parallel to each other for almost 4 miles despite there being no barrier. The effect is caused by the different characteristics of the two streams. On one hand, the dark Rio Negro is about 82 degrees Fahrenheit and travels about 1.2 miles an hour. On the other hand, the Amazon is much clearer, travels more than 3 times the speed of the Rio Negro, and is about 10 degrees cooler. These differences, combined with the different acidity and molecular features, mean that when they meet each other, they refuse to mix. 2. The Eye, the mysterious rotating island. Ever wish that you had a different view from your window? Well, if you lived on a tiny island in Argentina, then you wouldn't have to move. Known as the Eye, this tiny islet constantly moves around the water underneath it. Just like a human eye, it's almost perfectly circular and positioned inside a larger circle cut out of land. Even stranger is how it constantly moves around. The physical mechanism has been linked to strong streams of water moving underneath, though paranormal theorists have a more fun explanation. It was made by aliens. 1. Waitomo Glowworm Caves. Some places on Earth don't need sunlight, and the Waitomo Glowworm Caves are certainly one of them. Located in the northern part of New Zealand, the cave is illuminated by thousands of insects called Arachnocampa luminosa, native to the country. These tiny bugs thrive in the dark, using their bioluminescence to lure unsuspecting prey to them. From below, visitors are treated to a light show from the thousands of glowworms stuck to the cave ceiling. 500,000 people visit the site every year. So, what's the coolest natural phenomena you've ever seen in person? Let us know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and check out our social medias, including my personal ones, links in the description. And you know what? Are you still in the mood to be mystified? Well then how about taking a deep dive into a mass psychological phenomenon? From the real color of Pikachu's tail to misremembering one of Tom Cruise's most iconic scenes, we've put together 25 things that prove the Mandela effect exists. Some of these events you'll be sure happened, but they are strange tricks of the mind. Click here to be astounded. Seriously, click here. Watch this one. The Mandela effect, people seem to love. You guys love our Mandela videos, so here's another one that we've done prior. Click it. See you there.